idea of what the boule man was, we're going to take a look at boule on Wiki. In ancient Greece, it originated from a council of nobles who advised the king. It consisted of 400 to 500 citizens who were put in charge of running day-to-day city affairs. So they were like the face of the public who went back and reported to the king what was going on. So that gives us a bit of insight as to why boule even came about in the first place. But I guess the question today lies in, what was the reason for the black boule of the 1900s?
The Bible says they put taskmasters, gatekeepers. If you ever did you see the movie 12 Years a Slave? Remember the movie 12 Years a Slave where the white man was raping the black girl and he was wanting to whoop her, but he gave the whip to the black man to whoop her. They always get the taskmaster. This was the house Negro, field Negro syndrome, where they always give some blacks a little more privilege and he would keep the rest of them down. This is what the boule is.
The Black Boule was founded by Henry McKee Minton and 5 friends: Eugene T. Thompson, Robert J. Abel, Dr. Algernon B. Jackson, Dr. Edwin C. Howard, and Dr. Richard J. Ward. They met in the home of Minton in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on May 15, 1904 to form what's known as the boule. The reason for the boule was to recruit highly educated black individuals of a high status. To give you an idea of Minton's status, he was an African-American pharmacist and physician. He attended the academy at Howard University and Phillips Exeter Academy, a college preparatory institution in New Hampshire. He attended the University of Pennsylvania Law for a brief moment, and then later received a degree in pharmaceutical studies from Philadelphia College of Pharmacy. He worked at Frederick Douglass Hospital as the first pharmacist. He operated the first black-owned drugstore up until 1902 in Philadelphia. He received an MD in 1906, being the first African-American to graduate Jefferson Medical College. 1907, Minton helped to form Mercy Hospital. 1920, Minton was appointed successor for the next 24 years of Mercy Hospital as superintendent. The boule fashioned themselves after Yale's Skull and Bones, an undergraduate senior secret society.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society. It's so secret we can't talk about it. What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go on.
Sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322. For both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us? Not much, because it's a secret. Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, a secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets, Tim.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
Now, the boule's purpose was to service blacks during Great Depression, World War I and II, and the Civil Rights Movement. Joining the boule gave certain perks to its members for their loyalty. The boule fraternity quickly established chapters referred to as member boules. By 1908, it had expanded to Chicago and Baltimore, and on August 31st of 1908, it established the fraternity as a national fraternity. But I guess to further examine this situation, we have to ask another question. And my next question would be, how were they fashioned after a Masonic secret society? Let's break down the boule's roots in Freemasonry. Where did Minton get his Masonic roots? So let's jump back in time a bit and see what inspired the first black fraternal organization to even come about. We run into a Prince Hall. Prince Hall Freemasonry. This is a branch of North American Freemasonry founded by Prince Hall in the 18th century, consistent predominantly of black Americans. Prior to the Revolutionary War, Prince and 14 other black men petitioned to get into Boston St. John Lodge. They were declined. Masonic fraternities were attractive to some free blacks, like Prince and his friends. Being rejected from colonial Freemasonry, Princeton XIV sought after Masonry Lodge number 441 of the Grand Lodge of Ireland Military Lodge, March 6, 1775. They were initiated in. Prince and the other free men began the African Lodge number 1, and Prince was named the Grand Master. When black men wanted to get in, it actually had to be a unanimous decision. This wasn't easy. If they got one no as a vote, then the applicant was rejected.
I'm fixing to commensurate and come up with a verdict up in here.
Albert Pike wrote a letter to his brother back in 1875 saying that he wasn't inclined in the matter and he only took obligations to white men, not Negroes. He also said that when he has to accept Negroes as brothers or leave Masonry, then he'll choose to leave it. So he was willing to walk away if blacks joined. So black Masons had limited power. They were only given authority to meet as a lodge, participate in Masonic processions on St. John's Day, and bury their dead with Masonic rites, but not enter Masonic degrees, but not confer Masonic degrees or perform any other essential functions like a full operational lodge. So because they weren't able to create a chapter, they applied to a Grand Lodge of England, where the Duke of Cumberland issued them a chapter for an African Lodge number 1, and they later named it African Lodge number 459, September 20th, 1784, the country's first African-American Masonic Lodge. Now, Prince had become popular from his workings and was made a provincial Grand Master on January 27, 1791. His responsibilities were now to report on Boston Lodge's conditions. 6 years later, he organized a lodge in Philadelphia to 459 under Prince Hall's charter. March 22, 1797. They later received their own charter on June 25, 1797, later known as Hiram Lodge number 3. Now, by 1797, the Boston Black Lodge had around 34 members, but it was still overlooked by mainstream Boston Masons due to immigration issues. Unable to attain integration, they concentrated on recognition from the white Masons, trying to prove their descendant from Prince Hall, Massachusetts, to be legit and not clandestine, meaning covert or done in secret. Now, they were trying to prove their entitlement to all Masonic rights under the charter granted from English Grand Lodge, which gave them access to black or white lodges without prejudice.
The house Negro could afford to do that because he lived better than the field Negro. He ate better, he dressed better, and he lived in a better house. He lived right up next to his master in the attic or the basement. He ate the same food his master ate and wore his same clothes. And he could talk just like his master. Good diction.
Now, December 4th, 1807, Prince Hall had passed, and they wanted an African Grand Lodge formed in Philadelphia in his honor. It formed June 24th, 1808, and was declared its independence from the White Grand Lodge by Grand Lodge of Massachusetts in 1827. Now, Prince Hall Freemasonry was the first historically black fraternal organization, which was separate from fraternal Greek organizations, which later sparked. But some examples of the Prince Hall would be first Alpha Kappa Nu at Indiana University in 1903, Gamma Phi at Wilberforce University in 1905, Pi Gamma Omicron at Ohio University 1905. These only successfully established one college chapter each. Now, Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity formed at Cornell University December 1906. But right around in the mix of all that, you had the boule, which was the first Greek letter society, which popped up in 1904. So Prince Hall Freemasonry fathered the rest of the black fraternal organizations. So did they create their own personal elite recruiting center? Because to be in this elite Sigma Phi organization, you had to be asked in. You had to be invited in by a current member. and the group only consists of about 5,000. So you had Prince Hall Freemasonry, then you got the Boulets, then you got the Black Greek letter organizations. So now it's time to look into the Black Greek letter organizations, or the BGLOs, to save myself some breath. So let's just look at the roots of some of the traditions that some of our BGLOs practice today. When you look at the military fashion, it actually evolved from around the 1940s, where a lot of blacks were returning home from World War II, and they were joining these fraternal organizations. Thus, over time, it picked up its military-style drills.
What time is it in these special times? What time is it in these special times?
The heavy Greek influence could very well stem from Alexander conquering Rhodotus around 331 BC in Egypt. Rhodotus was its original name before he conquered it, and later named it Alexandria of Egypt on his 10-year Hellenic conquest to conquer Persia. This part of the time was known as the Hellenistic civilization, where Greek culture was forced upon non-Greeks. A very important event during Alex's conquest is where he learned alchemy and all Egyptians' ancient practices. Alex's successor, Ptolemy Soter, I could say that wrong, I'll place it on the screen if I did, a Macedonian general, created a library that held an estimate of 40,000 to 400,000 papyrus scrolls. It was known as the most famous library, and it fell victim to many fires, the last fire taking it out, making it famous, known as the loss of cultural knowledge. This library displayed Egypt's wealth, its research, and all the information it had gathered from around the world and was translated onto papyrus scrolls. They even attended book fairs from around the world in numerous libraries and gathered all these different books and original scrolls. It is unknown who was solely responsible for its fall, but it is known that Julius Caesar of Rome set at least one, if not all, the fires in 48 BC.
What we're looking for here is, says the colors of the fraternity shall be blue and white. It says the official insignia of the fraternity shall be a pin bearing the figure of a Grecian sphinx and urn. I thought it was interesting that when Warren Christopher went to the Middle East, Brother Ashwa, the place he went was to the Sphinx. And I need you to teach us something about this, about why he may have went there. And in the story, it says his code name is Sphinx. This is the vice chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's a part of that secret society that Cecil Rhodes set up. He's the vice chairman of it. That's why he chaired the Commission on Your Rebellion, because he's in charge of all Negroes. He's now Secretary of State, in charge of Negroes worldwide. Secretary of State Christopher walks from the Sphinx, which he called, quote, a reminder of the tremendous contribution Egypt has made to modern civilization. Now, them ain't the right guys, buddy. Boy, them are not the guys. But he went there. Early on his first day of his just concluded Middle East trip, before the official talks with Egyptian leaders were to begin, Christopher made a walking tour of the nation's most famous landmark, the the pyramids and the Sphinx, and about why he's there and what's there. So now we know that the logo is called the Grecian Sphinx. We also know that we found Brother Maurice. When we first found about the Grecian Sphinx, we actually were looking at the logo, and we felt that the logo was a griffin, because a griffin seemed to be similar to the concept of the Grecian Sphinx. And it was our thought that that was a griffin that was there, and Brother Maurice looked up what the griffin meant in Webster's dictionary. And you can see that it says something about the griffin. Right. Now it talks about the fabulous bird with the wings and 4 legs and the ears and all of that. But in the second definition of a griffin, origin unknown, it says a white person new to the East. What? Yeah. One recently come from the Occident. That means what? White man. That's deep. And then a griffinage, the state of being a white person recently come from the East. Damn. And then it says Griffinite, Griffin Park, Los Angeles. So the griffin stands over you. From the highest point, looking over all that you are. They call it Griffin Park, and its conclave is the Greek theater.
Now, let's take a look at branding. The origin of branding could be the ancient treatment of a slave without rights. According to Wiki, millions were branded during the transatlantic slave movement. Now, the definition on Google of brand is an identifying mark burned on livestock or especially former criminals or slaves with a branding iron. So let's take a look into the origin of the chant or the call. This goes all the way back to when blacks were enslaved in Americas. They actually used these calls to specify locations or express emotions through song, which were often in a call and response tradition. After slavery, the value of the call and response tradition had kind of changed. The northern blacks kind of frowned upon it and had a bit of distaste in their mouth. Let's take a look at the main showcase, the stepping. Let's look at the origin of stepping. This goes all the way back to something's called gumboot dancing. Gumboot dancing came from the 19th century. It was a form of self-expression for isolation workers who carried the migrant labor law system and oppressive past laws. It was considered a means of survival. Blacks worked in gold mines of South Africa for long, strenuous hours. It was harsh and horrible conditions, and there was no talking allowed. Now, the mines would constantly flood out, and their bosses, the Caucasian workers in higher positions known as foremen, did not want to pay to fix this problem, as it would cut into the profit. The poor drainage resulted in hours of standing and working in wet condition, which would leave workers with ulcers and skin irritations. Now, this was slowing down production, so the foreman issued rubber boots, heavy black Wellington boots. They also issued jeans or overall suspenders and bandanas for the sweat. Now, above the mines, workers lived in poor and crowded living conditions. They were forced to live in groups grouped by tribe and ethnic groups, and as a result of this harsh condition, workers adapted traditional dances and rhythms with all that they had, their feet and their bodies, or the gumboots and bodies, which is what we know today as stepping. The songs were sung with frenetic movements which dealt with working class life, family, love, drinking, low wages, harsh bosses, and this actually led to enlightened employers to capitalize or commercialize this dance. They gathered the best dancers and used them to entertain their visitors, creating a new market which cost them nothing. So we just got a little bit of the history of some of these black fraternal organizations, and our question is, what would be the purpose for the boule or the black boule in today's world?
Steve Coakley, who discovered the boule by accident, which means a French word which means advisor to the king, and this certain secret group of black people who were advising certain things that were happening in the black community.
When black people like me talk to the slaves, they didn't kill him. They sent some old house Negro along behind him to undo what he said. You have to read the history of slavery to understand this. There were two kinds of Negroes. There was that old house Negro and the field Negro. And the house Negro always looked out for his master. When the field Negroes got too much out of line, he held them back in check. He put them back on the plantation. The NAACP and Urban League have been maneuvered into criticizing us against their own will. Usually, the divide and conquer tactics have always been used by the oppressor to keep the oppressed oppressed.
The white man pays Reverend Martin Luther King, subsidizes Reverend Martin Luther King, so that Reverend Martin Luther King can continue to teach the Negroes to be defenseless. That's what you mean by nonviolent. Be defenseless. Be defenseless in the face of one of the most cruel beasts.
Odd topic. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, baby.